So what will it take to get a new pipeline built in Canada? Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is ready to spend $14 million of public money to act as a proponent, but her government is only going to get it to the starting gate and said on this program last night that she doesn't want to foot the bill for the full build of a bitumen pipeline to BC's northern coast. Now, Smith is confident a private company will pick up the ball from there. One of the companies that will be advising the Alberta government along the process is Enbridge, Canada's largest pipeline company. Would Enbridge be willing to take over that project? I asked CEO Greg Ebel in our broadcast exclusive interview. Mr. Ebel, thanks for joining us and welcome to Power Play.
Thanks, Mike. Great to be here.
I wanted to start with the announcement from the Alberta government yesterday. Your company is part of this advisory group with two others. So I wanted to know, what exactly will be Enbridge's role here?
Yeah, for sure. So one thing I guess I would say is, we're in 43 states, all the provinces, 5 countries. So we advise a lot of governments on a lot of things. So pleased that the Premier has asked us and others in the industry to give her counsel on if the situation is available to actually build a pipeline to the West Coast. What would that look like? Obviously, as the largest energy infrastructure player in North America, we've got a lot of experience. Like the others who are part of this, we've got a lot of experience in British Columbia. So TMX, obviously owned by the federal government, and SOBO. There's experience there to be had, and so governments consult. I appreciate that, and we'll provide them the best advice possible in our intellectual capital, if you will, at this point in time, to put her in the best position to be the proponent for the pipeline.
So in that role, will your people be paid by the Alberta government to provide that kind of expertise and advice?
Well, there'll be some cost recovery. This is anything but a profit maker. That's, it's advice, and we'll get some cost recovery on that front. But again, it's people. It's not capital that we're putting to work. It's human capital, if you will, or intellectual capital.
Your company also joined others in the oil and gas industry in calling for an end to the West Coast tanker ban and an end to the federal emissions cap. Those are things that you've outlined and been very clear about in the past, also today at the Empire Club. If those two issues and the others that you've raised and the others in the industry have raised are addressed, what guarantee does the federal government have that your company would invest money to build a pipeline in Canada?
Well, I think the first thing they can point to is we've already proposed this and tried to build a nation-building pipeline in the past, right? We had a project that was to the West Coast that had the support of many Indigenous nations, had the approval of the Canadian Energy Regulator, and the support of our customers. So now you have pointed out a big if. So if the tanker ban is removed, if we get to the right spot on carbon levies and emission taxes, and our customers therefore have the ability to produce a product that is produced amazingly relative to other parts of the world, then I think that opportunity is there. But again, one only has to look to the past of this industry and Enbridge and others that have proposed such pipelines in the past. I'd also point out that we are spending some $30x billion across North America, 5 or 6 of that in British Columbia on pipelines today. So, we are a company that invests and grows with our customers, and we operate in jurisdictions that welcome us. And those pipelines in British Columbia today are bringing natural gas to the Lower Mainland and to LNG facilities, which, as you know, governments have been very supportive at this point in time. It took us a long time to get there, and which are absolutely critical to moving the country forward.
I guess I'm just trying to sort of get it more sort of simply. If they go ahead and answer all of the, I don't want to call them demands, but sort of respond to your requests that you've put out so succinctly in those 2 separate letters, does that mean that Enbridge will be the proponent of a pipeline to the West Coast?
Well, I don't think you can be that definitive. There are several other players involved here, but what it does mean is that Enbridge would entertain the possibility of a proponent. Today, I can't even do that because obviously you're not going to build a pipeline to nowhere. So if the tanker ban's there, why would you build a pipeline to the West Coast? So I think it gives us the opportunity to be a proponent, which is why today all we are is an advisor. The proponent is the government of Alberta.
Yeah, and I guess I'm asking because you're saying an opportunity to be proponent, but you know the federal government is likely looking at this and saying, okay, well, what guarantees do we have on our side that if we make our move, that Enbridge will make their move?
Well, again, I think if you look at the past, if you use the word Enbridge, you're talking about someone that has already proposed this in the past. If you talk about TMX being involved, as we know, as painful as it was, that was built. And there are others that have built in that regard. And all of these customers have, with the right circumstances, supported pipelines. So I don't think you have to look too far to see concrete, real examples of Enbridge and other pipelines being willing to be the proponent of a pipeline if the conditions are set. Capital will go to where the conditions are set. And today the conditions are not set for that pipeline to exist in Canada. It's existing in other parts of the world, and seems to me, and I think most Canadians, if you look at opinion polling, I think we're talking about 88% of people recognize and believe that the oil and gas industry is critical to Canada, and about 75% are supportive of building oil pipelines, and think we can do that at the same time as finding ways to do it less intensively from a carbon perspective. So not only are there possibilities to be proponents out there, importantly, Canadians are looking for the leadership to actually carry that out.
Some of the things that you're talking about and what you need removed, from your perspective, does it matter if it's a blanket removal of all of these regulations, i.e. the tanker ban, the emissions cap, and industrial carbon levy, versus a case-by-case exemption that are issued by the Major Projects Office? Do you have a preference one over the other, I guess is my question.
Well, here's what I would say to that, Mike. Look, I think that having bespoke regulation is not a great way to formulate capital and bring it together. So, look, that may work on occasion, and there may be a particular project one wants to pursue and the government may want to pursue. That's up to them. But I think what you would be better off doing is creating the conditions across the entire country that will allow capital to come and these projects to be pursued. The Public Policy Forum put out a report recently where there are some $600 billion of projects that are looking for an opportunity to be built, and that if those are built, they could add $1.1 trillion to Canada's GDP by 2035. So I don't think you just want to pick and choose. I think you want to put in place the conditions for private capital to form, for companies like Enbridge and others and producers to actually produce, and the rest will look after itself, quite frankly. And I think you see that in a lot of other places. Remember, 10 years ago, there were no LNG projects on the West Coast, on the Gulf Coast of the United States. And in fact, you couldn't even export from the United States. Today, they have already built 10. There's another 8 being built and another 10 yet that have been approved. Meanwhile, we're just getting there now. So that was all about policy by successive governments, not picking individual projects, but actually creating the conditions for the capital to be formed, for the customers to support them, and companies like ourselves to be able to build those projects. There are plenty of examples of this working, and Canada is amongst the best to make it work.
But even if the industry does get what it wants here from the federal government on the regulatory and legislative front, there remains opposition amongst Indigenous communities. Now, the coastal First Nations, for example, states it explicitly. They do not support a pipeline and oil tanker project in their coastal waters. So how does industry address that opposition?
Look, I think one has to consult up front, and I think the Premier, I mean, you saw her conference yesterday, is trying to do that. Obviously, we're at the very early stages. I think we have to recognize as Canadians, not everybody is going to be 100% on side with all these projects, regardless of what project is. That's just not the way of any modern society. I mean, some people will like them, some people won't. And we see this with Indigenous participation, First Nations nations' participation in our other projects. Sometimes we get nations that want to participate, sometimes we don't. Therein lies the essence of self-determination, I think. So, look, there's a long ways to go. We're probably getting ahead of ourselves until the condition precedents are put in place, the 5 that I mentioned today at the Empire Club, and that over 100 CEOs across the energy spectrum have put in a letter very clearly, as you point out, to the Prime Minister. So once those are met, and part of that is Indigenous equity participation and participation in those projects, then you've created the conditions for things to proceed. We're not there yet, let's be honest.
No, I take your point on that, but we are at this point today because the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, has promised to turn Canada into an energy superpower. From your vantage point,
right,
is that feasible? Can Canada truly be an energy superpower?
Absolutely. I mean, we have supplies of, you pick it from uranium to natural gas to oil to gold. I mean, we have everything set up. The only thing that's stopping us is ourselves. I mean, we have the need. There are 7 billion people on the planet that don't have the same access to energy that we do in North America. We have an obligation, a moral obligation, I think, to help them move to use the products that we have in this country. And let's not forget, we produce oil and gas, amongst other things, amongst the cleanest of any nations. So if we don't do it, the only people that are going to be able to do it will be the Russians and the Iranians and others that, frankly, I'm not sure Canadians would like to see those 7 billion people served by those players as opposed to ourselves. And even the United States as well, right? This is a competitive world. We have the products. We know the demand is there. We should take advantage of that and serve Canadians while also serving other parts of the world.
So do you think that Canada and the federal government's regulations that are in place are standing in the way of that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I mean, one only has to, whether it's Europe, you see permitting reforms that are going on there. I think the Prime Minister recognizes that. You know, on election night, I believe he said, build, baby, build. I think those words matter. I love that enthusiasm from him. I think he recognizes we have been uncompetitive for the last 10 years, and he knows that changes have to be made. He wouldn't have created a major projects office if he thought things were going swimmingly in terms of building infrastructure. He knows things have to change, and I support him in that and look forward to those changes actually coming to fruition.
Okay, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. Greg Ebel, President and CEO of Enbridge, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Mike.